Hi, I'm Sherry with Busy Bee Projects. Today we're going to be decorating an arrow for a Boy Scout ceremony. My son right now is a Cub Scout. He's getting ready to do the bridging ceremony, and I was given this arrow and told to decorate it, and my husband he decorated a little bit at the meeting and brought it home and handed it to me and said, can you finish decorating this? So I kind of looked at it and was kind of stumped for a little bit trying to figure out what to do to decorate it, but I think I finally came up with a good idea, and that was to put Indian beadwork all over the shaft. My original idea was to paint, but since I can't paint, I thought beadwork would be perfect. So this video is going to show you how to do Indian beadwork that ties in with the bridging ceremony that boys go through when they go from Cub Scouts to Boy Scouts. So I hope you find this interesting and useful. To start this project, I did some research into the ceremony that they're going to be going through, and there's 4 colors that the ceremony is integrated into the ceremony, and they light these, I think, 4 candles. And the first candle is blue, and it stands for to do your best, which is the Cub Scout motto. It's also part of the promise. They promise to do their best, to do their duty. Anyway, blue candle stands for best. So what I did is I laid out on graph paper. My cat's checking out the camera here. I laid out on graph paper, and then I did my design, and I spelled best. And then when I actually did the beadwork, this is what it turned out. Does that smell good? You done chewing on that feather? She was chewing on the feather that was on that arrow. I had to shoo her away. Okay, best. And the reason why the lettering is so small is because when you actually go to wrap it around the arrow, you can see that you only see a little bit of it at a time, and I wanted you to be able to read it without turning it back and forth, so that's why the lettering is so small. So, best. Believe it can happen, expect success, set your mind, and try, try, try. So that's the first theme, is blue, best. The second color is white. In white, let's see, where's my pattern? Here's my pattern I laid out in graph paper. And this is for those 12 things: trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. I forget what those are, if that's the motto or a pledge or a... I've got so much stuff I get kind of confused. He's my first Boy Scout, so... Anyway, white, and it stands for all these things. So I just really spelled them basically out. And this, the length of this set my length for everything else. I wanted them to all be the same length, and this pretty much has to be this long to fit everything on, so that's why I made the blue one this long. I wanted them to be equal size. Okay, my third color is yellow. Here's my yellow pattern and what I ended up making for yellow. And yellow is the arrow that points the straight path, and it has the sun over it with 7 rays. And I have forgotten what that stands for, but this has to do with, this is like represents the bridging ceremony. So I'm just getting ready to do my last one, which is supposed to be green. And green stands for new path, new start. Where is it? Flip the page and we have green. So this is what I'm going to try to make. So I've sketched it out on paper. I did this kind of like path around here, and since Boy Scout, the highest honor is Eagle Scout, I chose an eagle for this. The patterns and themes for all the others were really easy. This one I had to kind of come up with a thing of one, because a new path, a new start, it's kind of hard to put into symbolism, but I'm going to try to do this. So we are going to make this one. I think making the first 3 was a big learning curve for me. I kind of learned a lot of do's and don'ts, so we're going to get started and make this one, and I'm going to walk you through the steps. Alright, here we go. This is what I'm using for a loom, and it's just a toy loom I actually picked up at a garage sale, and it doesn't really work quite right, but I'm making it do. I'm having one of those make it work moments. So when you thread your loom, you need to have as many gaps as there are beads. And for my project, I figured out that it has to be 23 beads by, I think I did 50. Yeah, 23 by 50. So if you, on graph paper, mark off a 23 by 50 area and then fill that in with your pattern. It should just about fit Although I found I had to buy some more beads, and the beads that they were selling locally are a little bit bigger than the old ones I had. So, you know, it's kind of one of those, you gotta just kind of figure out what to do and what'll fit. So, you might want to just do like 20 beads. Okay, so I need 23 beads, so I need 23 gaps in my thread. And if you can see, I have big gaps and little gaps just because my loom isn't working quite right, but it'll be alright. So to start, I've got a really long pointy beading needle, and I'm going to tie it to my first thread. Just going to tie a knot. And I'm just using sewing thread. You know, they have beading thread, but this wasn't anything I really wanted to spend a lot of money on. Wasn't sure if it was going to work, so I just grabbed some thread and started playing around, and it seems to be working. Okay. Alright, now I need to get 23 green beads. Look at my pattern. My first row is just completely green, the dark green, and I'm gonna get 23 green beads. I just got them in a bowl, and I can just poke at them and pick them up. There's 1, 2. There's a lot of color variations, but as long as you just randomly pick, it usually turns out okay. If I counted right, there's just 23. Now my goal is to get one of these in between each of these threads. That first thread is loose. It should be a lot tighter than that. First one is really hard to get to lay. It's always a real pain. I got it. Now it's just laying on there, but I've kind of pushed them on so that they're, I don't know if you can see that real well. It's just laying on top right now. So what I need to do is I'm going to put my finger on there and hold them. Hold them. And I'm going to come from the back. And on the back side, I'm going to run my needle through them all again. And now I have a thread. Often if you have a knot and it's got a loop in it, if you tug back, it'll pop out. There, got it. Alright, so, I think we've got it. Now, to recap, I laid the thread on top, got one bead in between each string, and see now I can pull it tight. There, now it's looking good. I have my threads all evenly spaced with a bead between each. I've got a top thread and a bottom thread. I'll pull that tight. Now, it's not going to stay, is it? Usually it just automatically stays. I think when I start the next row that'll help. Now I consult my pattern. Looks like I have a whole nother row of solid green, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to string all these green beads. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, I've got my first 2 rows of solid green according to my pattern. Second row goes along a lot easier than the first because now my threads are all established in the right gaps. I'm going to show you how to do the next row, and then I think you get the hang of it. I'm on my 3rd row. It does help to take a piece of paper sometimes and cover up everything else so you can kind of see the pattern. So I know I have a dark green, 3 light, dark, 3 light, dark, 3 light, and on up. So I'm going to fill my thread with those beads. So you can do that. My light color beads are actually in this sack. There's just a miscellaneous assortment. So I'm going to go in my plastic tub and get a dark bead. Fish one out. And then I'm going to open my sack and I'm going to pick out 3 light green. Now, this sack, they are such an assortment of sizes. Try not to pick out any too big or too small. Try to kind of pick them out the same. So there's, and then I just keep going. So I have the whole row on top right now. I don't know if you can see that very well. It's just laid on top there with bead thread, bead thread, bead thread. Kind of push it. Come on, last one, get in there. Stay, there. Now, it's just laying on there, nothing to hold it, so I'm going to stick my finger on it, flip it, and then come in, and I want my needle to be on the other side of my threads. Can't even find the hole because I'm looking from behind the camera. Now, I've done that correctly. When I pull, it should be woven. And I'm going to push them down against the next row. Here. And that is how you do Indian beadwork. So one row at a time, I'm going to go through this pattern and do the whole thing. And I'll be back to show you how to start a new thread when this one runs out. Alright, as you can see, I've been working right along, doing it row by row. I need some more thread now, so I'm going to show you how to start a new thread. You take a new piece of thread and your old thread and put them together. And then you're going to just loop them around each other. So, how do I explain this? You make an X and you slip the one under the other and then pull it tight. This usually works pretty good, and then check it, make sure it's tight. Now, the knot's small enough that it should fit between your beads and you can just keep on going. And at some point, you can see in this row I started a new one and my ends are sticking out here too. So we're just going to go back and clip those over. So now I'm just going to continue beading and might have to give it a little tug to get that knot through the beads, but it should be okay. I'll be back when I've finished with my pattern and then I'll show you how to take it off the loom. Okay, I am completely done weaving my design. I've got all the way to the end. I just stopped here. And I'm going to show you what to do with your threads. You want to cut. On this side I'm just going to do one at a time. I'll cut one thread and then I'm going to knot these two threads together. Just like you would knot your shoelace. X them around through and pull it tight. You can't pull on it too tight, otherwise it distorts your pattern. But pull it a little snug, and I'm going to do that all the way down. So now I'm going to take this one, I'm going to have to cut another one, tie those together, and just work your way down, tying every two threads together. And if you, sometimes you end up with 3 at the end, that's okay, just tie the last 3 together, however it works out. So then you're going to have, it's going to look like this. Oh, that's kind of blurry, isn't it? You're going to have this mess of threads, and they're all tied together. And what I've noticed, though, is they don't really stay tied very well. If you leave them sit for a couple days, they get kind of loose. So what I'm going to try, let me tighten these up a little bit, is I'm just going to take some white glue and just dab some on those knot ends, just a little bit. Glue on every single knot. Make sure they're tight. And I'm even gonna take my fingers and get rid of the excess. Just kind of wipe it so there's no blobs. There. I think that'll help. And then after that dries, I'll come back and I'll clip all those threads. So here we go. Tie and glue to secure. Next 2 steps.